Welcome to the podcast, Guidance with Gab. Learn and unlearn all things wellness. Welcome back to another episode of Guidance with Gab. Learn and unlearn all things wellness. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about masculine and feminine energy, but we're going to take it another step further and kind of talk about the imbalances that I observe, notice, and see right now in society, with a lot of women leaning more deeply into their masculine and men leaning a little bit more deeply into their feminine. So let's get into it. I want to start this off by saying I acknowledge, understand, and respect all the other genders right now. But for this episode and for the context, I am using specifically just men and women because it makes it a little bit easier to understand. And I personally don't have the experience and the knowledge to come on here and speak about other genders. So I just want to make that clear that there is no ill intent in creating this episode. I'm just focusing solely on man and woman and masculine and feminine energy because that is what the episode is about. And again, this is no hate or lack of acknowledgement towards other genders. Just want to make that very clear and put that out there. And I also want to give my opinion on masculine and feminine energy before getting into it, because I personally believe that each individual person has their own makeup of their balance of masculine and feminine energy. But to generalize, again, there's going to be a lot of generalizing in this episode to make it easier to swallow and understand. But in my opinion, I think a most balanced, speaking from my experience, woman is a woman who leans more deeply into her feminine and has masculine traits. And the same for men. I think a man is at his optimal balance when he is more deeply in his masculine, but also is able to hold and express feminine energy qualities. And this doesn't pertain to every single person, because some women naturally hold a stronger disposition in masculine energy. But this episode is going to be rooted in the imbalances that I see in society that are simply accepted right now. And this looks like women who are overworking, overproducing, feeling the need to be hyper independent, and men who want the women to take the lead a little bit too far and want them to be the planner and the provider. So that is pretty much the basis of this episode. And this episode doesn't come with any judgment or shame, because I used to be someone who lived so heavily in my masculine energy. And it was almost like I was proud to be living in that energy. I want to make another episode maybe next week about how I kind of got out of that, how I transitioned from being so heavily and proudly in my masculine to accepting, flowing, and living in my feminine. That process was very difficult and confusing and took a lot of unlearning, relearning, a lot of weird tips that I used in order to get there. So I think that's worth an episode. But for today's sake, I want to focus on what I discussed before: men in their feminine and women in their masculine. When I personally think of feminine energy, if we try to picture what that really is, I picture a very flowy woman with a dress on in a field, kind of having that floating, light, airy energy. Feminine energy is very flowing and free, divine, and intuitive. The feminine flows from a state of understanding and empathy, feeling like that warm, cozy feeling of being understood by someone. And in order for feminine energy to work, it's rooted in a lot of faith. It represents being versus doing. Doing is way more of a masculine trait. And this can often be seen as a negative because there is the airiness to it. There's not as much rigidity. A woman in her full feminine may be moving in a state of intuition, letting the intuition take the lead versus the logic and the structure. And sometimes, especially in this world right now, can be seen as a negative, unfortunately. We live in such a world where overproducing and being productive and doing is cheered on. That's what is accepted and what people think is success right now, at least in the world we're living in. So a lot of times people don't respect and understand the roots of feminine energy. And feminine energy, again, is not specific to just women. It is simply in energy, the same as masculine energy is an energy, the same as any other, type of energy just is an energy. I'm not speaking, when I talk about feminine energy, I'm not speaking about women. I'm speaking about the qualities of the energy in itself. When we think about the qualities of masculine energy, it is that more structured and rigid, planning, doing type of energy. They're going to be very focused, taking action. They're going to be more stable and predictable. And the way I picture it is masculine energy is the anchor and the ground to the airiness and the flowiness of the feminine energy. And when I picture more of the masculine energy, I picture like something sturdy, something stable, something that can withstand and withhold something. And I also see it as this confidence and ability to take lead without having the ego. And that is key right there. It is having the ability to be a leader, having that strong authority level in a sense, but without having the ego and the expectation that people should follow. And sometimes this can be seen as negative because there is, the portrayal of the ego sometimes in this. It can be seen as like demanding, or even with the rigidity, it can be boring for a lot of people. It can be too structured. It can be not a lot of fun. So there are the pros and cons to each. It depends on the person's perspective and how they view it. But what's so beautiful is how masculine and feminine energy can work perfectly together because they are on opposite sides of the spectrum. And I think masculine and feminine energy work so well together because the man can create and plan, and the woman can intuitively follow if it feels right, of course. And it's not saying that the man makes all the rules and the woman just follows, or the masculine energy is meant to control and the feminine is just meant to blindly follow. That's not it. It's when someone is so fully in their true masculine, you feel like you can trust them because they are trustworthy. They are safe. They are a protector. They are a provider. And then the woman, the feminine, whether it's man or woman, the feminine can flow naturally with it. With her intuition, the feminine energy can notice, this feels right. I like this. I feel safe. I will float with you. And it's all about creating the space. It's the feminine energy creating the space for the masculine to take the lead, to create, to build, and the masculine energy creating a safe space for the feminine to flow, to feel like she can just be her light, airy, divine self in a safe space. And in regard to dating, because that's mostly where this whole topic came from, I feel like a lot of men right now are focused in their feminine energy, and this is from my experiences and my observations. I think there's something to be said about men that really want the woman to be creating all of the plans, and I feel like men right now have that chase me energy. And how I see it is the woman should be, and this sounds so old age, and this isn't necessarily what I mean, but like the courting. Like the man should be putting in the effort for the woman, and the masculine energy, that is what it does. It is the provider, the protector, and the feminine should be able to flow and be free. And the man creates like the plans and the effort. They are the doing, and the feminine is just the being. But right now, that feels a little bit opposite in the dating world. And I know these are going to be so many hot takes, and I don't want someone to interpret this as like I'm reverting back to the old ages. Like I'm all for women independence, but I'm not for women needing to live hyper independently because they feel unsafe around men and feel like men are not reliable or supportive for the woman to be free. So back to dating. In my experience, it has been that the men are kind of like falling back and almost like trying less because they are in their feminine. They want to be chased. They want to have the woman reach out to them. They want to feel hunted. They want to feel wanted, which is more than okay. Men also equally should feel wanted. But there is just an imbalance happening where women are feeling the need to plan more dates, to do more of the controlling, to pick the places. But there is more of the women being the providers right now, which again, perfectly okay if that's your situation. But if we're speaking in the form solely of energies, then there is an imbalance there naturally. And I see this energy exchange the same way as I do anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. So typically, women fall more into the anxiously attached, and typically, men fall into the avoidant attachment. And again, just generalizing, but women feel the need to be anxiously attached because a man is avoidant, and men start to avoid because the woman is anxious, and it creates this cycle of you're never going to win if you're in that cycle unless you both come down to your securely attached state. And that's what I feel like is happening with masculine and feminine energy right now, where the women feel the need to fall more into their masculine because they don't trust that a man can be the provider, can be the protector, can be the planner, can take initiative, can be that masculine energy. So women are taking control of all of that, which then leads men to fall into their feminine and just kind of close their eyes and let the wind take them, which is feminine energy, closing your eyes, being with the air and flowing. And then it's also the other way around too, because men are not taking the initiatives as much, and because they are deeply in their feminine and want to be more of that flowy state, women are needing to become the provider. They're needing to have the structure that men are not giving. And this isn't to say that I'm coming at men or women. I'm just explaining from an outside perspective the energy exchange and how this cycle is working. Because again, the same way as anxious and avoidant attachment, if one is out of balance, the other is going to have to lean more into it, and vice versa. So we have this weird cycle happening that I've been noticing in dating and in society, speaking specifically of heterosexual relationships, where there's the imbalance. So women are just living in this like hyper active masculine energy, and men are just falling back into their feminine. There is a time and place for men to be in their feminine and women to be in their masculine, 100%. And men hold feminine traits, which is beautiful and amazing. We definitely want that. We don't want toxic masculinity. And women also hold qualities of masculine energy, which again, perfect. You balance it out when you're within yourself. But then when it falls into a relationship dynamic, then a woman may feel the need to be more masculine and the man more feminine. And that's when it gets a little messy and a little wonky. And this also, I'm just speaking of theories right now. I think right now there is this girl boss energy. Women are feeling the need to be the successful, badass, money making, I provide for myself, and this like mass productivity that's happening with women. And if we look back, it kind of does stem a little bit from like the feminist movement that happened years and years and years ago, which again, I'm not going to get into all of that. And yes, I am a feminist. Please don't come at me. But there is also a way that women can now find their equilibrium. I think we went from feeling so oppressed to then we found our power. And on that power trip, I think we went higher into our masculine, and now we need to kind of come back to find our balance, which I do think is happening a little bit. I do see that change going on, but it's like when you are all the way down here and then you go all the way up here, you're going to have to come back to your center because that jump happens so fast. And I think that our natural energies live somewhere in between. We're not supposed to be oppressed and like traded with, I don't know, like traded and used for our bodies, and we have to listen to men and do whatever they want. But I also think that we don't need to be this hardcore, strong-headed fighter. We don't need to be that. We should be maybe somewhere in the middle. And again, this is just my opinions. Please don't come at me. And something that I've also been noticing is how this has been impacting female bodies. I think there's been so many issues with a lot of women's like reproductive areas and gut health and all of these things that, I mean, you just go on the internet and you see it. And I think a part of it is rooted in this disconnection from the feminine. Even if we're thinking about having our periods, women are still overworking out during their periods and not flowing with their cycles as much. Again, I do think that right now I've been seeing a bit more movement in the space of connecting back to like your personal moon cycle, but I think that was lost for a really long time, as if we were trying to hide that part of us, that we were trying to suppress it. And that comes from a subconscious belief of needing to be in our masculine. And when you accept and embrace this feminine flow, you start to feel your divine feminine energy. That's something for me that, again, I'll get into another episode, but has been such a huge help in connecting to my feminine, is accepting my flow and not trying to fight it. All of these physical issues for women and complications are coming up because we're trying to live the world of a man. Because at the end of the day, we live in a man's world, unfortunately, and we're feeling the need to put ourselves in it and to fit into it. And we don't have a work schedule that flows with our cycle. We don't have a day-to-day lifestyle that caters to our cycles because, again, we're living in a man's world. And so we are not connecting to that part of us that we deeply need to be connected to. We're fighting against it and we're trying to fit into a man's world. Therefore, we are falling into our masculine energy. We are trying to be at the same level as men and work at the same level as men, whereas that's not our flow. We are so brilliant, so creative, so capable of creating amazing work within our flow of the cycle. But I don't think women need to be like pushing and forcing during their moon cycle, during their phase of the month. I don't think that that is necessary. But since we are catered to a man's world, we almost have to, which therefore pushes us into the masculine energy. And I do think men being in their feminine, some of it's like a little toxic because I think they, through conversations I've had with men, it's as if they want to throw in our faces, oh, you wanted equality. You wanted to be equal, so pay. And it's as if they resent us for it. Maybe they feel attacked because we are capable of being the providers now. We have been forced to live in a man's world, and they feel maybe like their masculine energy has been taken from them, which can be super valid. But I also think they are flowing now in their feminine because they're like, oh, you want to be like us so bad. You want to be equal so bad. So boom, do it, live that life. And that's totally the wrong angle that it needs to come at. Like, we need to find our balance both within ourselves and in this world, working with both men and women. I don't think it should be thrown into our faces that we wanted to fucking vote. That's what we're talking about here. There's such a big misconception when men are like, well, you want equality. Like, yes, because I want to fucking vote and be able to work and buy a house. But that doesn't mean that I want to be the sole provider, or doesn't mean I need to be the sole provider. It doesn't mean that you can take a back seat and do pretty much nothing because I want to have the same rights as you. Like, what? I think the biggest thing here and the biggest takeaway is that we can modernize masculine and feminine energy. I think a lot of people see it as very old age, the very like a vintage mindset where the men buy a property, we can't do shit, we need to stay at home and be housewives. That's how masculine and feminine energy are perceived, which I don't think is correct and I don't think is right. There is a way that we can modernize these energies to make it fit into our worlds now. It doesn't mean that women need to stay at home and cook and clean while a man goes to work and we have no rights. But I think we can still find our balance, and women don't need to become the sole providers and fall deeply into our masculine. And I don't think men need to fall deeply into their feminine for this to work. There is a way that we can make these energies modern and fit into our day-to-day lives now. Like, this isn't the Bridgerton era where men go in and they like pick their wife and it's like 50-year-old men picking 12-year-old girls. That's not it at all. But there is a way where men can still express their interest and take the lead when it comes to building a relationship nowadays that is still embracing the masculine energy. And there is a way that women can, hopefully, with the trust of men — I can't believe I just said trust men on a podcast — but by trusting that they have the right intentions and that they are capable of leading and providing, then women can be more trusting and flowing with the man. And I think modernizing this can look like a man learning about a woman's hobbies, interests, needs, and then creating an entire date based off of that. You are not taking control and saying, we're going to eat this, this, and this, and then we're going to go here, when the whole time she's like, I don't even eat meat. Why are you taking me to a steakhouse? But you take into consideration her interests, what she likes, and then you plan a day that you think she would really like and that you also would enjoy. And she can just show up and you can take the lead with the planning and she can enjoy the day that you have planned. I think that's a perfect explanation and example of how we can modernize the masculine and feminine energy. It's not the man saying, I have a full day planned because this is what I want to do and we're going to go do it. And it's not the woman just sitting there pretending she's having a good time, even if she's not. It's taking a woman into consideration and planning a date based off of what she likes, and the woman trusting that a man was actually listening and is going to give a date that she actually likes, and she can not feel the need to control it. She doesn't need to know every single detail, and she doesn't need to have this control freak energy about the date. And then we have our balance there. That's a perfect example of how we can just bring those energies into our current lives now. It can also look like defending a woman in a conversation if someone is talking negatively about them. I see that a lot now where it's like, oh, you can fight your own battle. Like, I can, but if you are in a situation where something not so good is being said about me, then maybe it would just be a good idea for you to step up and say something. I don't think we need to just like throw women to the wolves and be like, you wanted to fight, so fight. You can also still be a protector without viewing me as your property. And that's the best way to describe all of this. You can be a provider and a protector without viewing me as your property. And I can view you as a provider without feeling dependent on you. I know this conversation might be a little confusing just because I'm speaking of the energies and not specifically man and woman. And I know that it can be a little controversial with what I'm saying, but I feel like it needs to be said because I am single and I am dating. And these conversations come up so much of the time where we're kind of over it. We don't want to be the one like chasing and feeling the need to help a boy put his fucking pants on to be a man. And I think men are just so used to it at this point because women have taken maybe too much of the lead in a situation. And again, next week I'll be talking about how I healed from being in my masculine energy and was able to start flowing in my feminine. But I also acknowledge that some women hearing this might be like, well, I want to take charge, and all power to you. I used to be like that. I used to feel like that was okay. And that was me in my balance. Like, I'm just an independent woman. And I am an independent woman, but I'm still capable of flowing. And that's where a little bit of a difference comes in. But again, I'll be talking about it on another episode. I just want to acknowledge and say that I'm not judging anyone in this situation. I'm not judging men. I'm not judging women. I'm not judging females that are living in their masculine or men that are living in their feminine. I'm just trying to shed some light on a topic that I've been noticing more and more and more over the past few months. We just need to come back, and men can find their masculine a little bit more while still holding these beautiful feminine qualities, and women can start to flow in their feminine while still holding these masculine qualities. There's just a way where we can all find our balance a little bit more without tipping over the deep end and living out of regulation of who we truly are at our core and what our energies are asking for us. Yeah, I know this topic was a little bit of a weird one, but I hope you enjoyed, and please message me about this. I love having these conversations about it. It's kind of it can be debated for sure because it is a bit controversial. And again, I hope no one took offense to the heavy usage of solo, masculine, feminine, man, woman dynamics, but just for the sake of the episode, that's what made it simpler. So I hope you enjoyed. Follow me on Instagram, Guidance with Gab. Read my Substack, Guidance with Gab. If you need to find me anywhere, it's Guidance with Gab. Have a good day, guys.